I always find that fascinating, the leap to going from a carrier in a kind of a captive situation to going and betting 100% on yourself and making that leap. Walk us through the move there.
Well, you have to do a lot of soul searching and think, it's going to be a different environment. So leaving an agency, you're the only person there. So you don't have the ability to talk to other people about what to do. So you're basically in charge of yourself and you're doing it all on your own. And I'd had enough experience. I knew mostly what to do. And it just goes from your captive status and with a certain set of products to now it's an open-ended situation.
Sure.
And you're truly working for the clients. And so it's our job to seek and search out. The transition was more mentally difficult than it was physically difficult, if you can make the two distinctions. So we didn't have a lot of problem doing it. It just took time to get all the clients moved over, get used to all the processes and pick up. And we were probably running at about 75% efficiency in 90 days or less after that. So it was a transition, and at that time, my assistant that worked with me was actually a client and had retired and then started working with me she said, whenever you go out on your own, I want to work with you. So she came. So she was familiar with a lot of things that we had done because she was actually a client and had that experience. So that made the transition easier than most would probably go through.
Was it, what made you decide to do it, though, out of curiosity? Any one thing? Was there a straw that
there
broke
was
the camel's
one thing.
back?
There was a case that we had that the current company could not process, and I found someone that could, and that was the deal. If you're a captive agency and they don't want to play with others, and others are the only ones that want to play, you change your sandbox and go to the place that will play, and that's what we did. And I'm really glad we did, because that was the actual beginning of the end of that company, which the next company is no longer in existence either. So the companies have both failed that we were with originally. So we made the right decision at the right time. The sinking ship, we jumped off. We didn't know that, but that's the way it
Spider
came
sense.
down. And then the broker-dealer changed again 3 years later. They were acquired, and the acquisition company was not treating us right. Actually, they were treating us like the old company where we were, and I said, I don't want to be involved in any of those. We're telling you what to do every minute of the day with products. And so we left and went to the new broker-dealer, and I've been there now 18 years-ish.
Oh, gosh.
So stable, better environment, more focused on the individual advisor practice, and they're not telling you what products to do or how to do it. It's all, how do you take care of your client, how do you provide the best objective service, and operate in a manner that makes the clients be number one.
Yeah. So, Michelle, you jumped ship then a little bit later and hopped on board. What was that process like for you, going from a big home office-y type environment to running around with this guy?
Very different, very different. I was used to working with, being an operations manager of 20 producers with a full staff, going from that environment down to, one guy that does the business of 20 producers.
Nice.
And being the only staff. So it was a big change, but I'm very thankful for it. So
now, 35 years later, that's almost got to be a work relationship where you probably say, "Wait, did you say something?" Because you're listening to his thoughts.
I can't keep up with those thoughts.
She goes in her corner, and I go in my corner, and we meet somewhere in between.
Yeah, absolutely.
necessary.
We do two very different things. He's the guy that knows what he wants to happen, and I just try to work in the background, Madeline and I, trying to make it work.
So do you have very rigid tasks? Is everything outlined, or is it just what you need to be doing?
I know what I need to be doing, yeah. Pretty much, yeah.
It's structured to be the same thing, basically over and over again, with just a different set of client parameters.
Yeah, why reinvent the wheel? Simplify and replicate.
Yeah.
Right. We created a process, and we manage the process, and we take everyone through basically the same process, but everyone is uniquely different.
Yeah.
So everyone gets a uniquely different plan. It's just executed on our end as the same or similar types of processes. And we're not doing everything we could be doing, because I don't want to be an expert at 57 things. I want to focus on 5 or less so we can do a better job, rinse, repeat over and over and over again.
Yep.
Yeah. It may be a different order, it may be a different timeline, but it's pretty much, the same. It just depends on the client.
How long did it take you to develop that process?
I was in the strategic coach for several years, and we started building it right away. And it probably took 2 or 3 years to get it streamlined where we could do it consistently over and over. So once we got the parts of the process done, how we're going to execute them and follow through, and had to do it enough times to figure out where the kinks are, what was working well, what wasn't. Then we probably got it down to maybe 3 years. You think we did 3 years?
I would say so.
So I think it was about a 3-year learning process, because when we started, we had some failures, and we had to learn from those failures to not do that again, or what was it that caused it to occur, and then we moved on from there.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Madeline. So do you and Madeline have your pretty much set role of what you're doing in the process?
Pretty much.
Someone comes in, that we're grabbing Form A or...
Right. Well, I mean, our process is very simple. We keep it, A, B, C, and she handles a lot of the front end stuff, and she's only been with us about 2 years, a little bit over 2 years, so she also is now getting to where she can do a little bit more of the service process, which is a huge help because, that's pretty big whenever you have a large clientele like we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you do a lot of client events? Are you doing client events?
We do.
We do one a year. We were doing others, but we've been through this COVID shutdown where we didn't do as many as we used to.
So things have changed.
We're actually trying to redevelop the client events, doing something every quarter, mixing it up, addressing different clients in the process. So we're going to redo that. I don't know how COVID's going to come out this winter, or if we're going to have another something. But I sure don't want to spread the evil virus of the day around among our clients. So we're going to be very focused on that, and we'll see how this winter educational event that's upcoming is received, attended, and hopefully no one gets really sick from it.
That's interesting that you mentioned it. Since you do, your primary funnel right now is you're doing events on college campuses?
Yeah, junior college or community college. Mm-hmm.
What did you do during COVID? How did Oklahoma address that? Did they get shut down for a long period?
They shut down for a long period of time, and we attempted one of the online classes right away, and most people were not used to that, and so it tanked. So we didn't do that. So we just basically held our own for a year and did nothing, or a year and a half. And then as the school started opening up here and there, we got classroom space and started doing our in-person classes again just a little bit to see if people would come, if we could pull it off with the school schedule. And it's still a slow process. We're not back to full speed yet.
Yeah.
We're trying to acclimate to the environment. So that's it.
It is interesting. The early days of COVID. It's going to be funny when we look back on this, because this is our Spanish flu of our generation. When we look back on the tech and the communication and how we did all, everybody in the country got kind of a crash course in virtual. My parents are in their 80s and they're on their iPads now a lot. My mom always says that Dad's looking up girlfriends or something.
Of course.
But it's interesting that jump in education for our clients. Are you doing anything on virtual now as far as any client communication or anything like that?
No.
Our
clients aren't really acclimated to that. And the other thing is people will come to us when we first establish a relationship, and they'll say, well, how often do you review or meet with us? And my response is, well, we'll try to do it every quarter, maybe every 6 months, but from our actual experience with our clients is once they've come in 2 or 3 times, they see things are actually operating on autopilot.
Sure.
And they don't need to come in as often. And so we'll call, and they'll say, no, everything's fine. And unless there's a major event or we have something that comes in, and we'll say, we want you to come. So they're trusting us to do what we're supposed to do behind the scenes, and we're executing on that. So we don't necessarily have a lot of client events. We're trying to get everyone in at least once a year for review, and there's some people we haven't seen in 2 or 3 years because of the COVID information, and we're available on the phone or in person or whatever they'd like. So we're trying to meet the needs of our clients however they perceive that at this time.
What, out of curiosity, what did you do as a client event?
Which, the last one we did?
Yeah. What'd you do?
We had that was Flex Plan. Or
we've
SEM, actually.
we've had 2 of our product suppliers come out with information on new offerings that they had, and we went to a restaurant and people would make reservations, and we invited those that were specifically utilizing that product, and they came and had question and answers and received a presentation on what was new and updated. So we had a client dinner event.
Sure.
We've had 2 of those. That's it, except for during COVID, instead of having our in-person sit-down holiday educational event, we took orders, and they could drive up and pick up a lunch or a dinner take-home meal
nice.
From us. And so we got to see
a
all of
great
our
idea.
clients face-to-face in person. They stayed in the car. We stood back, handed out food to the window. How you doing? Everything's great. Merry Christmas. And they drove off. And so
nice.
It
Actually,
was a
they,
great idea. We actually, I saw it picked up on somebody, I don't know, I saw it somewhere in maybe an industry magazine or something, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's a great
that's
idea.
cool.
Let's do that. Let's do that because, a lot of our clients are retired or pre-retired that, and COVID just in general, didn't want people in large groups, and
Sure.
we had very large groups for our client, our Christmas event. So being able to do the Christmas to go is what we called it, and
holiday educational event. Let's
yeah,
get it right.
They just kind of came in and they sent their RSVP in with their lunch or dinner order, and that it was ready at the country club, and we were the ones that ran it out to them. And
Was that a bear to do the backside, the organization?
we're pretty streamlined on that. We've done many events over the years, and we kind of have a pretty good system in place. So, I mean, it's a lot, and you want
Yeah.
to make sure that you don't mess anything up, for sure, because that might be the only touch you get with that person in a year.
That is a great touch. I mean, it's such a short touch, but a meaningful touch.
Well, it's actually 3. They got an invitation. They had to call in their order, and then we saw them when we dispensed it. And that's what we've been doing anyway on all of our events. They pre-select their meals. So the difference is they didn't sit down. We just handed it to them, and off they went, or we saw them or visited with them for a little bit. So it's similar but different in the standpoint that they just didn't spend any time inside with us or anyone else. So.
Yeah. Almost like a perfect scenario of they get to see you, they get to the touch points multiple times. They get to see you do something great, which is who doesn't like a free meal to take
Yeah.
home, and they didn't have to you didn't have to talk too long. You just-
Yeah. We had our little, headbands with our elf ears or our reindeer ears. And
Do we have photos? I'd like
yeah.
to see this.
I wore a pretty interesting Christmas
Yes,
outfit
he
with
had a
pictures
Christmas
in front of the
outfit.
tree.
Yes, yes.
Very nice. Maybe this year, that movie where the kid wants the BB gun.
They're coming out with the new Ralphie. I
They're
saw
coming.
that.
Yeah, they're coming out. Maybe this year for Christmas, we get you that pink bunny costume.
I've already ordered the Grinch.
There you go.
They haven't seen it yet. It hasn't been revealed.
I need to go. I need to go shopping, don't I? Yeah,
A Grinch costume. Well, that'll be great.
Yeah.
that'll be awesome.
I thought I'd be a Grinch this year. Now I just got to find it. I have it somewhere. It's been filed away, but we'll get it back.
It'll be out there somewhere. It'll be out there somewhere. Well, as we're close, we're recording here as we're in the month of November, and we're working our way towards the end of the year. What excites you about 2023, and what maybe is a concern? You have any concerns? What's?
Well, we're excited. We're going to do more in-person events, and hopefully people will be attending those events. We'll have good weather. We won't have any weird sicknesses floating around. And in so doing, hopefully the prospects and new clients that we get will also be more outgoing, seeking, human touches instead of hiding behind a computer or something. We hope people will be coming out and getting more involved socially than staying on their own. I think that's been a real problem. People have just been hiding or cocooning inside their little cocoon somewhere. And that's not good for a lot of people, is they need to be out and have interaction with humans and other things. So we're looking for social interactions. We're going to do more events every quarter this year. We're trying to plan that out right now, what and where. We have some ideas. We haven't finalized or put those into action yet. However, we have lots of ideas that we're going to start and pursue.
What worries you about 2023? Anything?
Oh, what worries me? Another pandemic or crisis or something else that puts fear in people's minds. Everybody's been reacting to fear, false expectations appearing real. So do we really have these problems, or is this a news media influenced or created problem that they're trying to sell to the masses? And that's what I'm worried about, is they're not going to clean up their act. They're still going to be receiving tons of bad news that may or may not actually impact anyone whatsoever. And they've got to stay the course. And if we're truly long-term, outcome-based planners and investors, we have to look to the long term. And the short-term hiccups will occur. We have to be prepared for them and say, well, this is another short term. How long did it take to recover from the COVID lockdown? The market went down. Everybody was, oh, whoa, and then just a few months later, poof, it's right back up and moving again. So these are things that occur in the economy. It's normal. They need to be able to just wait them out. Some people lose their patience, and that's what's going to be the problem, is impatient investors.
Do they? So I've got a question for you. So we were talking earlier today, and one of the things we were talking about was inflation. And this just dawned on me of something you said a little bit ago. With your experience being from Oklahoma and oil, when you said it, when I knew you were an engineer, I didn't realize you were in the oil industry. So you left about like 83, which would have been bubble pops there. And that would have been, for those advisors that are a little younger, they wouldn't maybe recognize that what was going on there probably the 4 or 5 years leading up to you leaving the oil industry, which would be we had a different administration at that time. We had inflation, we had malaise, or whatever word it was that Carter used, kind of just that crummy attitude. Things weren't going so red hot. We have inflation. We have
and high
OPEC.
taxation.
Yeah, high taxation. We had oil. We had OPEC was really strong then. We had gasoline shortages, and so this all sounds kind of, gas gets really expensive. All that. What lessons do you take from that? From a different perspective, when you look way back now, hindsight 2020. What lessons do you take from your prior experiences?
Well, we need to learn from the past. Not to relive it, but what were some of the causes back then? And is there something we can do to prevent that right now? You mentioned the Arab oil embargo, shortages. We were not producing enough. We've seen a technological increase in the ability to frack and go back and extract oil from previously we thought was dry holes or we couldn't get anything out of them. Their ability technologically to remove more oil is a big impact. But when you can't do that, or you have someone that's standing in the way, you can't drill here, you can't drill there, you can't do leases, you get an artificial contraction of the ability to produce crude oil, which is refined into products. And then you have we can go into deep weeds of who says you can't refine this or can't refine that.
Or where are you going to do it?
Or we haven't built a refinery in 40 years. And so a lot of this comes from the perception or reality of how markets should operate and how regulation should operate. So you have to learn from that, and it could be a really rough go. Here we're looking at potential of a diesel fuel shortage. That could be exciting. And then if you have a railroad strike that actually comes off sometime in December and you have a shortage of truck drivers, and diesel fuel, we're going to be really hungry and cold this winter, and that's going to be a really bad thing. And hopefully that does not happen, but you go through cycles. We had the Arab oil embargo. We were short on oil. Gosh, that happened in the 70s. Is that going to happen in the next, the 20s? Things tend to repeat themselves because people are not necessarily learning from what happened in the past or what got you there. So it's outcome-based planning is different. They're not looking at what's happened in the past, looking at the future. And I don't think people are looking back and learning from what's happened in the past to try to plan their future.
I think a lot of people feel like they just don't recognize that it's their first rodeo going through something like this. They don't realize it's repeated, or when it happened before. I always think of this. 2008 was massive, but if you back it up to 1987, we had the big drop. But then I think, well, wait, in 1987, I think I was a sophomore in high school, maybe. So I'm not really thinking about. I'm thinking about study hall and passing the history test, and my parents are sweating that out. But so we forget those lessons, and it's good to have somebody who's been out there and not your first rodeo.
And what happened to the stock market returns in the 70s? It was terrible. Flat Dow for 10 years. People didn't realize what was happening at the time, or when they go back and look, that won't happen again. Well, what if it does? And how are you going to plan and execute if the stock market doesn't provide the returns they think it will over a period of time? They're relying on historical perceptions that may or may not prove to be real. And how do you plan around that? And that's one of the things that we do through certain guaranteed things and trying to manage around it. So it becomes, you have to be flexible, and you have to plan for the unexpected, and you have to have a backup plan.
That makes sense. Well, I have a different question for you. I'm going to treat myself to some water here. So how did you land on, everybody that I've ever talked to has a different way of attracting new clients and new prospects. And the way that they do it tends to kind of line up with who they are personality-wise. How did you end up where you're at now with the teacher mode? Did you have teaching in your, like the teaching bug in you somewhere, or?
I would say
What do you think?
kind of. You started years ago teaching other advisors. I mean,
Right. I was teaching the LUTC courses,
Oh, nice.
and I self-studied CLU, CHFC, CFP, and they needed someone to teach the LUTC courses. So I did that, but that's not a specific reason why. Is we were doing referrals. We were trying to build our business, and one of our providers said, have you tried seminars, dinner seminars, or this or that? And we tried it and failed miserably.
Why do you think?
I don't know. But we never could. We tried different venues, different processes, different types, styles. We did all kinds of things. We did investment seminars, long-term care seminars back there when long-term care was brand new. We did this, we did that. And we did the follow-up. It was probably the audience that came was just not the right audience for what we were doing. And I don't know if that's the mailing list fault or the way we did it. It just was not something that
It just didn't work.
turned out. It didn't work. So
Yeah.
I was looking for something else that would work to supplement our normal prospecting activities. And I received some information on these educational seminars. And I knew someone that was doing it and it had really decent success with it. So this was a different version of that. And again, I was in strategic coach. Did I start at the same time? Coincident with that. And they were telling us in strategic coach, create a plan, your own unique process, and do different steps. And that's kind of was the beginning of the development of this, is we'll try the class teaching. And there was one other person doing it, and I was doing it. That was pretty much it. Everyone else hadn't started doing it. They're still doing dinner seminars or something else. So we started the teaching 18 years ago. And that's when we developed the process and all the teaching things that went along with it. And it was very successful for us. So that was all we did. That's all we focused on. And that's been our main prospecting tool since then.
So they have, I know, I'm going to ask this, but I know the answer because we were talking about this before. So they have homework.
They have homework. We assign homework, and we start off with the first part of our class. We give them a quiz. And what I'm looking for is how they have been pre-programmed or misprogrammed by what they've read in the media or heard at the water cooler or something else. And a lot of people will have perceptions that aren't real as far as withdrawal rates, expected rates of return, and how they measure or base what they should be investing in. And it's not what they think. So that's what I'm trying to get across, is you may have been told something that's not really true in practice, or you believe this or you believe that. And again, most people have not retired. And so until you retire, you don't really think about all the different things that can impact you. And the first 4 questions have to do with things that will really break your retirement. The wheels will fall off and the train will derail, and it's very difficult to back up and start over if these 4 things have not been planned for or correctly executed. So the example is, how much can you safely withdraw from your nest egg? And you ask people that, and they give you a range. The answer may be unknown, but it's somewhere in the low single digits. It's not 15%. You can't withdraw 15% every year. So you find out, what is their perception of reality? Is it 2.8? Is it 3, 4, 5? How much can you withdraw? And then you throw inflation into the mix, and you're looking at what's the long-term income potential of investing like this, or do you take the safe road, or do you do this, or do that? And most people will look back at history and say, well, what's happened in the past, it's going to happen again in the future.
Yeah.
That's not true, and all prospectuses say that. So what are the actual realities of investing, income production, and longevity of that income? And we're trying to determine how and or what they know or they don't know, and then we answer some of those questions through the class is, this is why we ask you this question, and this is the probability of running out of money. This is the probability that this will happen or that happens. So it all becomes probabilities. It's not necessarily certain. So how do you manage those uncertain in those areas we can't control, control and manage what we can control, and then we have the unknown, that gray area. So it's all designed to focus on producing a long-term sustainable income that lasts as long as they do.
Yeah. So if you were, as a professor, as they're all coming in, before they've had the benefit of the course, if you were giving out grades, just as you think back, what would you give American financial literacy of the folks that on their way into your course, if you grade them?
Well, since only 3% can actually retire successfully without Social Security, I'd say everybody has a failing grade. Because of what they're doing online that's considered research, which may or may not be true.
Yeah.
They're doing calculators that have assumptions that they put in or somebody else puts in that may overinflate or underinflate something or give them results that are not tangible. You get a mix. Most people are not properly educated. Our class is not taught in regular curriculum. You have to be an adult, you have to sign up for it, and you have to seek it out. And most people are not actively seeking that out, or they're receiving bits of information here, here, and here, and there's no quarterback that consolidates everything and says, yes, if you use these assumptions, you do this, you do that, your chances of having a successful retirement are 80%. So what's an acceptable percent? I'd take 80 or greater. You get to 50 and 60 and it becomes you have a problem. So how do you deal with that? Do you work longer? Do you save more? Change your investment mix, get a second job, spend less? And a lot of people not thought about, what do you do if your numbers aren't there? And we're seeing a lot of people whose numbers are not there.
What do you think they're going to do? You think people just choose to work longer, or
Put their head in the sand and go down the road and just take what happens? It's the default easy thing they can do.
that is the easy thing?
And they ignore it. And so you can look at surveys done by the Employee Benefit Research Institute. They ask a select group of employees, what do you think your chances of having a pretty decent retirement are? And so 78% said everything's okay. But only 37% have actually tried to calculate how much money they need for retirement. So what's the difference between 37 and 78? Where are people not thinking? Are they thinking someone's going to come along, wave a magic wand, and retirement's just going to be great? It's not. You have to be able to develop a plan by looking at realistic expectations. How much money do you really need to live on? How much can you really expect to generate from your assets, Social Security, pensions, and all those assets that you have that can produce retirement income? And if there's a big gap, now how do you take the steps to fix it? Do you work longer, part-time, spend less, change your outlook on money? And I see a lot of clients that come in with lots of debt. They still have a huge mortgage on their house. They have 2 car payments, and some of them even have student loans. That's crazy. And how do you manage and control your debt? And I'm not a debt consolidation or a debt counselor. Sometimes I have to be, but that's a real situation people are in. And that's a problem. They're not saving enough, they're not executing it, and there's no thought or planning it. They're coming to see me too late.
Yeah.
Or the people that haven't necessarily taken into account the cost of health insurance that want to retire early. That's normally topic of conversation.
Right. We used to see normal retirement age about 62.
Uh-huh.
And then people realize, what does a health insurance cost from age 62 to 65? And that takes a huge dent out of your retirement income production.
It's a big bite.
So you either get a job where you or your spouse can carry health insurance till you're 65 and reach Medicare, or you're going to have a serious dent. It could be $1,500 to $2,000 a month. You have to pony up from 62 to 65. You do the math. Well, good grief, where are we going to get that $75,000 that you need? And that's and that translates to lots of money in retirement income that's lost because you've had to pay your out-of-pocket plus your premium on health insurance.
Do you see a lot of folks that are? I've been reading articles where people are, the articles are putting out there the idea that people are interested in retiring earlier, or they have the expectation that they can retire in their 50s. What are you seeing out there?
Fantasyland. Okay, so those are retiring in their 50s, 30s, 40s or something. Let's look at what their lifestyle is. We look at the 30-year-olds. Do they have any children? How much does it cost to raise a child?
A lot.
Right? Food, clothing, insurance, sending them to college. What are you going to do for your kids? So child raising is expensive. I don't see how they're making that work. Some of the ones that will retire, and I've seen this in the RV, they'll take an RV lifestyle. They're working, doing something remotely. So they're getting some form of income to help raise the kids. How many .com millionaires do you know that are 35 years old? I don't know any. They're not
Me
my
either.
clients. They're not here. So you're going to have some real asset base to support your income. So
Sure.
if you have $3 million, yeah, you can generate maybe $150,000, $125,000 a year. You could live pretty well on that if you managed your money and you're 30-something years old. Well, let's go to 50 years old. Okay, now you need to figure out how much you need to live on. Do you need $150,000? Do you need $50,000? And back into what that is, because you're not going to get Social Security until you're at least 62. You may or may not get a corporate pension. You may have a 401k. So everything is going to be based on income production from assets, and that's going to go up and down based on the investments, the market. There's the fluctuation there. We have a definition from a book from the past called retirement, which is what happened to people who retired prior to 2008, 2009, and their assets got cut in half.
Oh, yeah.
And now you're living on half the income you thought you could generate. So what do you do now? You go back to work, your spouse goes back to work. Are you going to be able to reduce your standard of living by 50%? I don't think so. And in order to get back to even after that trouncing in 2008, 2009, you have to earn 189% in 1 year to get even.
Yeah.
Well, nobody did that. They were
Yeah.
all chicken. They went to cash or something else, and so they reduced their ability to recover. They didn't have enough guaranteed sources of income to weather the storm, so they're financially wrecked. And if someone has an event like that, 2008, 2009, 5 years before they retire or 5 years after they retire, and they're not prepared with proper financial education planning and stuff, they're going to get creamed in retirement, so they're not going to be able to make it. So I think what you're seeing is people are retiring in the 35s or 50s, maybe can make it 5 years, 6 years, and we go through one of these financial correction, boo-boo periods of time, and their assets are getting wiped out, their income production is down. Now they're going to be forced to go back to work, start a business, or do something else, or take some dramatic cut in their lifestyle. That's fantasy land. It's like winning the lottery. How many people do you know do that? Very
Not
few, and they're the
Not
ones that
enough.
are publicized. I don't have any friends or clients that have done it. They all had to work. They lived below their standard of living. They didn't take on lots of debt. They always lived modestly. So when they are ready to retire, they have a modest lifestyle that they can maintain. They have assets, income. They have no debt. And those are the ones that make it financially. And that's not what's taught. People are taught spend, 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 buy this, buy
Yep.
that.
Buy.
Name brand stuff, this, that, and the other. And that just, when was the last time a realtor told you that the house you're buying you can't afford? You should always buy more. It'll always be worth more later. I've never seen anyone eat a house.
Yeah. Or wear it.
Well, and it's
Yeah.
expensive to maintain. You have insurance, you have taxes, and you have maintenance. I can talk to you about all three of those.
And none of them go down.
No, they never go down.
No,
never go
they
up.
don't. They
So,
sure don't.
And the cost of loans and carrying, it's a use asset. It's not a true investment. Yay, they may make some money off of it sometime, but did they recover all their actual expenses over the entire period of ownership? That's what you'd have to look at. And then how do you convert that to an income stream?
Yeah.
Okay, so there are challenges, but it comes back from proper financial education. Live below your means, save as much as you can, don't do any extravagant lifestyles, and for sure, don't charge a $20,000 cruise on your credit card and pay them 37.5% compounded semi-daily. That's a lose-lose-lose situation, and people will overspend because it's fun, and it's not so much to make up for it on the backside. Been there, done it, so I'm not going to do that.
Practicing what you preach.
Yes.
This podcast is for financial professional use only and not for use with the general public. The information provided is the exclusive property of Creative One and is protected by copyright and other intellectual property laws of the United States. This material has been prepared for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to provide, and should not be relied upon for, accounting, legal, tax or investment advice. Creative One is not responsible for the results of programs discussed on this podcast or any liability stemming from the use of it. Although we may promote or recommend the services offered by this company, agents are ultimately responsible for the use of any materials or services and agree to comply with the compliance requirements of their broker-dealer and registered investment advisor, if applicable, and the insurance carriers they represent. Copyright 2022, Creative One Marketing Corporation.